Thank you all for being here. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you'd like to support the channel, please hit that subscribe button. It's free and makes a huge difference for me. At 79 years old, Barry Gibb is finally opening up about the real story behind Maurice Gibb, and it's hitting people hard. Barry Gibb, born Barry Allen Crompton. Gibb, on September 1, 1946, on the Isle of Man, was the eldest of the Gibb brothers, the first voice in a harmony that would echo for decades. He grew up in a tight working-class family alongside Robin and Maurice, a bond that would turn into one of the most enduring musical partnerships the world has known. Music wasn't background noise in the Gibb home, it was oxygen. Barry soaked up the Everly Brothers' harmonies and the crackle of early rock and roll sweeping through post-war Britain, and before most kids had figured themselves out, he was writing songs and performing with his brothers, quietly drafting the first pages of a 6-decade career. The early 1960s brought a gamble that changed everything. The Gibb family relocated to Australia, and there the brothers sharpened their identity, recording under a name that would soon become a brand, the Bee Gees. Barry naturally stepped into the role of creative lead, steering melody, structure, and vision. His voice, supple, emotional, and capable of sprinting from chesty resonance to sky-high falsetto, stood out immediately. Australia gave them traction. Returning to the UK in the late 1960s, launched them. Barry's songwriting hit a startling new level with Massachusetts, To Love Somebody, and Words, songs that felt less written than revealed, built to carry private feelings across crowded rooms. By the 1970s, the Bee Gees weren't just successful, they were a weather system. Barry became the engine of their sound, especially as disco rose from a club culture into a global pulse. His falsetto-driven leads and meticulous hook-rich writing helped define the decade. Stayin' Alive, Night Fever, How Deep Is Your Love? They didn't merely top charts, they set them on fire, reshaping dance floors and pop radio at once. The group didn't ride a trend so much as architect it, with Barry constantly sanding, polishing, and evolving the sound so it felt both immediate and inevitable. And he didn't stay inside the group's borders. He wrote and produced for Barbra Streisand, Kenny Rogers, Dionne Warwick, Diana Ross, and others, proving that his ear wasn't married to a single genre. What separated Barry was control of emotion, form, and momentum. He could wrap a hook around a heartbreak so that listeners felt understood, not instructed. Industry veterans talk about his work ethic in almost athletic terms, and you can hear his fingerprints across generations. Fame, though, did not protect the family from loss. Barry endured the deaths of his brothers Maurice and Robin, shocks that arrived like sudden silences and never fully faded. He didn't retreat. He wrote, performed, and guarded the legacy with a kind of quiet devotion, honoring his brothers not by freezing the music in amber but by keeping it alive and purposeful. Later, solo projects and family collaborations made it clear. For Barry, music was memory as much as craft, a way to make the past coherent and present. Even as pop shifted in the 1990s and 2000s, he kept finding rooms where his sensibility mattered. He slipped into other artists' visions as a musician, producer, and arranger without crowding them, offering texture and backbone rather than spotlight theft. He contributed vocals and guitar parts where needed, acted as a structural coach when invited, and continued to anchor Bee Gees recordings that extended the group's influence beyond a particular era. The final studio album the brothers made together in 2001 felt like a curtain call, full of history and unforced harmony. Around that time, he explored unlikely collaborations, including a studio pairing with Michael Jackson on All in Your Name, a reminder that his curiosity hadn't cooled. He also turned inward, supporting his son Stephen on deeply personal work and releasing reflective solo tracks that sounded like letters to time, songs about rivers, ghosts, and fathers and daughters, music shaped by success but defined by loss and perspective. You could hear a man measuring out what to keep and what to let go. Barry's instinct to mentor surfaced on television as well. When he appeared as a guest judge and advisor on talent shows, he wasn't there to humiliate contestants. He listened, offered pointed adjustments, and recognized how cruel the pressure can feel when the lights first hit. The guidance was practical and humane, an older craftsman telling younger ones to trust the song and the breath that carries it. His personal life traced its own, more complicated route. Barry married Maureen Bates on August 22, 1966, barely 19 and already balancing dreams with deadlines. They lived near Abbey Road, just as London's scene was boiling over, and the pace of the Bee Gees' ascent collided with the realities of youth and expectation. The marriage ended in July 1970, brief, formative, and tangled up in the band's early rise. Not long after, during a taping of Top of the Pops, he met Linda Gray, a former Miss Edinburgh. What began as a chance meeting hardened into something steady. They married on September 1st, 1970, Barry's 24th birthday, and built a life that withstood international fame, tours, relocations, and the kinds of storms only families of public people truly know. 5 children followed. One, Stephen, would take up the family's musical tools in his own way. The household eventually grew to include 7 grandchildren. Through all of it, Barry and Linda kept the front door shut on gossip, choosing loyalty and privacy over spectacle. In 2009, while retaining their UK citizenship, they became US citizens, a final acknowledgement of the life they had made across borders. That long arc, boy soprano to patriarch, prodigy to steward, frames the way Barry now speaks about Maurice. For years, he defended the family mythos at arm's length, preferring to let records testify. Time softened that stance. When Barry talks about Maurice now, the tone gets unguarded. He says Maurice was the heart of the Bee Gees in ways the public didn't always see. People hear the falsetto and the harmonies and the glitter of the big moments, Barry says, but it was Maurice's quiet strength that made the music feel like it came from a family, not a factory. The comment isn't flattery, it's calibration. While Barry and Robin tended to stand at the front of the frame, Maurice's musicianship gave the group its depth and glue. He could slide from bass to rhythm guitar to keys to a vocal blend without calling attention to the pivot, building those intertwined layers that made a Bee Gees chorus feel inevitable. That versatility defined the sound's spine. Take it away and the songs would still be good. Leave it in and they felt inhabited. Barry's portrait isn't just musical. Maurice was the calmer current when the brothers' temperaments sparked. In a band of 3 siblings, tension was orbital, arguments, stubbornness, the tug-of-war between art and ego. Maurice didn't erase conflict, he grounded it. Barry says that when things ran hot, Maurice was the one who reminded them what they were and why they mattered to each other. In that way, he wasn't only a bassist or a harmonist. He was ballast, and that sort of presence doesn't make headlines. It holds a life together when no one's filming. The grief that followed Maurice's death in 2003 still sits inside Barry's voice. He admits he dodged the subject for years, not because he wanted to sanitize the story, but because talking about it reopened a room he had only barely managed to leave. Losing Maurice was like losing a piece of himself, he says. A brother, a collaborator, a sounding board who could tell him when he'd overpolished a melody or underfelt a line. After Maurice died, something in the band's sound went quiet. Barry could sing the notes, but not recreate the triangulation that had given their harmonies a particular weight. It took a long time before he felt ready to address that absence in public, and even now the sentences land gently, as if volume might break them. He also knows history can be unkind to the quieter figures in famous groups. The public often equates silence with a lack of influence. Maurice didn't chase the spotlight, and that restraint has a way of fading people into the edges of memory. Barry pushes back against that. Anyone who listens closely to the arrangements, the modulations, The way instruments knit around the lead vocal understands how essential Maurice was, he says. Every note is not his, but every note knows where it lives because of him. The point isn't to reorganize credit, it's to correct the distance between what audiences celebrate and what actually holds the celebration up. Barry's recollections also suggest how the Bee Gees managed to stay themselves while crossing styles and eras. The chemistry wasn't a slogan, it was 1,000 micro-decisions, the shared vocabulary of three brothers who knew the map of each other's voices and moods. Maurice's quick ear made key changes feel effortless. His steadiness made experimentation possible. When the band threaded R&B swing into pop architecture or tilted ballads toward soul, you could feel his hand on the rudder, keeping the song durable. What's striking in Barry's late-in-life candor is how little is performative. He isn't curating a museum exhibit, he's acknowledging the human scaffolding beneath a brand. His own accolades, Grammy wins, a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, Lifetime Achievement honors, are real and earned, but he talks about legacy as something more intimate. Not only the records, but the relationships that allowed those records to exist. He measures success by the melodies that endure and the people who helped him find them. In that light, Maurice's legacy isn't just a bass line here or a harmony there. It's the tone of the room when work began, the way a joke could diffuse a bad rehearsal, the look that said, "We've got it," when they finally did. Barry has always been a craftsman, rewriting a bridge until the syllables sit right, shifting a key so a chorus blooms, and his memories of Maurice carry that same care. He wants listeners to really hear the role his brother played, to understand that a band's center of gravity can be quiet and still be decisive. He knows fans fell in love with the high notes and the hooks, but he is asking them to listen for the ground beneath the lift. He ends on gratitude more than regret. "I could talk about Maurice forever and it would never be enough," he says. "He was extraordinary in every sense, and I owe so much of who I am to him." That's not a line. It's a ledger. The best proof is that Barry keeps making music in a way that honors the past without embalming it. He performs the classics because they belong to the public now, but he also keeps adding small, new things, fresh arrangements, collaborations, family performances that keep the legacy breathing. In those moments, you can almost feel Maurice at the edge of the stage, offering the cue only his brothers could recognize. Barry Gibb's story has always been about more than a decade, a genre, or a haircut. It's the long arc of a family making something bigger than itself, losing parts of itself, and carrying on with love as the binding agent. The charts and trophies explain reach. The way he talks about Maurice explains meaning. One is measurable. The other is why the songs still land. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that like button if you felt something real, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories.